and the guy sneezes and he says Gesundheit, and then he opens the door with what has to be one of the best facial expressions in all of film history, with this look that just says, "You're fucked, buddy. You screwed yourself."
Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, shows, and music from two people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson and Jeremy Scott.
Hey, how am I supposed to see what you... Holy God, what do you want? I'm taking your train.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Recotopia, episode 41. I'm Chris Atkinson.
I'm Jeremy Scott.
Yep. How's everybody doing today? How you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm doing well, surprisingly, considering I have my extended family, including 3 teenagers, coming to my house today.
It's going to be brutal. It'll be good. It'll be awesome. It'll be good. Yeah. But hello, everybody in the chat once again. People from Twitch, people from YouTube coming in and giving us the great feedback. This time, man, the comments are hopping. This morning. They're hopping. Last time there was like this big delay going on. I don't know what was going on there. But anyway, thank you guys for coming in and experiencing this today. Jeremy, do you have any small recommends?
It's no big deal.
Itty bitty living space.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
I got some small recommends.
Mm-hmm.
What is becoming a theme, I predict this movie will one day be a big recommend on the show. But recently watched 1992's Leap of Faith with Steve Martin. And boy, do I love this movie. This is about a traveling tent revival company that is just a bunch of cynical, lying money grubbers. The movie makes no secret of this. The opening scene basically shows you that they're grifters because he basically cons this police officer into letting them go. And they need a part, so they pull into this dust town. I think it's actually called Rustwater. And he decides to just set up the tent and do a revival there while they wait for the part to arrive, even though it's a small town. Young Liam Neeson, is the sheriff, and he is distrustful, as he should be, and ultimately is sort of the antagonist, even though Steve Martin is not a good person. He's the protagonist. And it's got some incredible gospel music in the soundtrack and also performed in the tent revival. And it's just a pretty straightforward story of this town that is in drought, and it's full of farmers who are suffering, and he's taking their money with false promises and doing fake healings. The kind of thing they do to trick people is they'll find an elderly woman walking into the revival tent, and they'll say, "Well, here, sit in this wheelchair and I'll wheel you right on up to the front row." And then later at the end of the show, she's wheeled up on stage and he asks her to stand up, and she can walk, of course, but in the pandemonium, there's no way for anybody to understand. And so everybody thinks she got healed. And then I just love the way this movie ends. I don't want to spoil any of it. If that sounds kind of interesting to you, please check it out. It's Steve Martin at his evilest. But in a very enjoyable way. It's a very funny, very intelligent movie. And let me see if I can tell you where you can find it. I don't think I can. My Google's is failing me, but Leap of Faith is at least on one of the movie channels because that's how I saw it.
I have somehow never seen this movie before.
Okay, well, that increases the odds of it becoming a big recommend.
Yeah. There was a period of time where Steve Martin, and he had his pretty big heyday with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and all those. And then he had these, like, I think Parenthood may have been his last really big hit for movies. And then he had this period of time where it was like Leap of Faith and My Blue Heaven and stuff like that I just never saw these. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to that. I love Steve Martin as well.
You know what? I
Um,
need to tell you, this cast is great. Philip Seymour Hoffman is in this cast as one
oh,
of
damn.
the employees that runs the rig revival.
Mhm.
Lucas Haas is in this movie
Wow.
um, as a kid who has walking braces, who wants
Mhm.
the pastor to heal him. It's got a great cast. You're gonna love it.
Okay. All right. Um, all right. So I took a trip to the theater again this past week.
Mm,
And I went to go see The Menu, uh, starring Ray Fiennes, Anya Taylor Joy, Nicholas Holt, and a
mhm,
gaggle of others, including John Leguizamo. Um, and I never really paid much attention to this trailer. I had a friend of mine who relayed his review and said he liked it okay, but he thought the trailer gave away too much. And I was like, oh well, good. I didn't really pay much attention to this trailer then because I really enjoyed the movie. And so yeah, this movie has that just that it's that great sort of cinematography and mood all the way throughout that makes you just instantly just you're just gripped throughout the whole thing. It starts off very kind of like light comedy-ish or whatever, but it starts to get darker and darker as the movie goes along. Um, but this is a really exclusive fine dining restaurant that these people are being taken to on an island, and it's headed by Ray Fiennes. He's the sort of the Gordon Ramsay of this restaurant. He's invited a whole bunch of people. Nicholas Holt is the foodie who like watches all the food programs and knows how you make the food. And he's like an asshole about being a foodie, basically. And he's got Anya Taylor Joy with him. You've got an older couple who you got an older couple there. You've got a food critic, a well-known food critic, um, and then you have a group of money men who fund restaurants, and then you have John Leguizamo, the celebrity of the group. John Leguizamo is playing like a star, like a fading star, or somebody whose star has faded a long time ago, or whatever. So they all are treated to the first course, and the movie's very dutiful about telling you exactly what's in this first course. You know, this is bowl of soup with lentils or whatever the hell. They tell you all the different things. And it's like, oh, that's really nice. They get right into this. We get into the food of we're going to see a lot of great food in this movie. The first course comes and goes, but things are a little off. You can
mm,
tell right away. You can tell that the people who work for Ray Fiennes in this are almost cultish in a way. They're really, really devoted to him. They are they are they are good, like they are too good at their jobs, like
mm,
it's if that's possible. They're just a little bit too good, and they're sensitive to tiny criticisms that are thrown their way, very
mm,
sensitive to them. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? So then the second meal comes along, and all it is just a bunch of flavors that you would put on a bread. They Ray Fiennes tells you you do not deserve bread. You're not getting the bread. You're getting just the flavors that are going to go with it. Nicholas Holt thinks this is genius, of course. Like there's a Ray Fiennes is always he's doing his meals or always tell a story, and by the end of the meal, you'll know what that story is. But this movie gets darker and darker and darker as it goes along. And Jeremy, you may have already been told about this. This has your trigger in it.
yes, I have been told.
Um, and there is a lot of there are a lot of lives on the line by the end of this at the end of this movie. You would never think that the way it starts out, but the one thing that is about this the people eating in the restaurant, they are all connected in some way. They don't know what that connection is right off the bat, but there is some sort of connection between them and or Ray Fiennes throughout, and this is the
Hmm,
reason why they're here. But this movie is very pitch black comedy. So if you don't like your comedy that gets mixed in with like death and gets mixed in with like like really harsh things being said, then you don't want to watch this probably. But I really dug the kind of the mood this movie set. It could have been better. Yes, it could have been a little bit better. I thought there were some things that I think they could have they could have sold out on a little bit more. But overall, really enjoyed this. Anya Taylor-Joy continues to just have this meteoric career, and I think she's great in this. Nicholas Hoult, who I never thought would be like somebody that I would be like, I enjoy seeing him in every movie. Every time he shows up now, I'm like, yes, Nicholas Hoult. I love this guy.
Yep.
Like, I never thought I mean, About a Boy, remember About a Boy?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that kid, he may do something. So he may be something someday. I don't know. But now every time I see Nicholas Hoult, I'm like, I know I'm going to love his performance. I know I'm going to love his character, all that. And I think Ray Fiennes, pulls out one of his best performances he's done in a long time, and because he's been in a lot of franchise movies and stuff. That's where we've seen him a lot, and you don't get a chance to really stretch in those. And I think in this one, I think he's doing a really good job. So The Menu, I really enjoyed.
I think Nicholas Hoult. Well, it was Mad Max Fury Road, and then The Favorite. Those two performances were like basically he can do anything. And I'm the same way. And I also saw an interview with Anya Taylor-Joy, a snippet. I think it was a British talk show, that Graham Norton guy or whatever, where she was talking about, and the headline is Anya Taylor-Joy talks about what it was like to become famous during the pandemic. And I'm like, okay, so we're probably talking about the Queen chess show, and then
Queen's Gambit, yep.
And then the Edgar Wright Twirly Dance movie.
Last Night in Soho.
To me, she was famous before the pandemic, like because she was in a couple M. Night movies, and then
she was in The Vovitch, and she was in what's that other one? She was in Split, and she was in the Glass, Split and Glass. What?
And Thoroughbreds.
Oh, okay. I never saw that one.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, she did. The Vovitch is the one that I remember first seeing her in, and
we're never going to stop saying that.
We aren't. But yeah, then she shows up in the Split and Glass, and I think Queen's Gambit though got her to a more mainstream audience.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And there were, as well known as those three movies we mentioned, or the four with the Thoroughbreds, much as they're known, they weren't known to your neighbor or whatever who goes to watch a movie every like once a year or something like that. So, but yeah, absolutely.
I want to bring to you another 64 on Rotten Tomatoes, which was the same for Leap of Faith. And I feel like I have to preface this because I think the audience and you, Chris, might think that I'm seeking out movies with Caitlin Dever or Zoe Deutsch, and I'm not.
I think you are, actually. I think you are.
But 2017,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
2017 was a movie called Before I Fall, starring Zoe Deutsch, and this is as straight up a Groundhog Day riff as you can get. I think it's Groundhog Day meets that Ashton Kutcher parallel back in time reading my notebook. I just unplugged my headphones. I'm having a great day. Anyway, Zoe Deutsch plays a teenager who her and her friends are bullying this new girl named Juliet, and they're at this party and they pour beer on her. It's pretty cruel. And then they get in their car to go home and they have a car crash and presumably die. But then she wakes up and she's like, oh, it was all a dream. And then she's going about her day, and then she starts to see similarities to the previous day. And they go to the party. They leave a little later this time. They still get in a car crash and die. She wakes up the next day, and she starts learning more about this Juliet person. She had died. I think the car hit her. That's the part of the crash, was she was walking with the beer all over her, and they ran into her and killed her. So they avoid the car crash on the third loop because Zoe Deutsch steers them away. They do like a sleepover. But then the girl, Juliet, she commits suicide. And so Zoe Deutsch begins to believe that nothing she does matters. She can't change anything. And very much like Bill Murray, there's a whole section where she starts doing whatever the fuck she wants during these loops, and humorously starts just telling everyone off about everything she's ever thought about them, because she knows it won't matter, and she'll wake up and do the day again. And that's about all I really want to say Um, if that sounds intriguing to you, it's on HBO Max. She is the star of the film, and she's great as she is in everything.
Hmm.
And if you like her and Groundhog Day riffs, which I do, I think you will enjoy this movie. And it's, I already said, it's on HBO Max. It's called Before I Fall.
It's crazy. We're gonna have my next recommend is actually going to be a pretty good double feature for this movie.
Oh,
Actually,
interesting.
so we've never done that before, and this was completely by accident because I've never seen Before I Fall. I had no idea what that was about. um, so so yeah, I am interested. I always tend to love this Groundhog Day type of narrative thing. Like almost, I mean, I think I've seen one version of this that was like, kind of. It was kind of like, and I don't even remember what the name of that movie was, but like it was kind of like, everything else seems to be like excellent. You know, I saw Edge of Tomorrow recently
Yep.
again,
Yeah.
and that's movie still just amazing to me.
Yep.
And but anyway, the one that I'm going to see is Criterion Channel's doing this thing with movies. I guess I think it's Sony Pictures Classics, and they're giving them some due for the movies they came out with in the '90s. And one of them is Run Lola Run,
Oh my God.
which I had seen a long time ago, but I wanted to give it its poster is even like that Before I Fall poster too.
Yeah.
If you could put them by side by side, but the but like the Run Lola Run, I was like, man, I want to watch something that's good and watch something that's really quick. And this is an hour and 20 minutes. And I was like,
Mm.
yeah, we're going to watch this because it's going to just take no time whatsoever. But, this movie, stars Franca Potente, who you may know from the Bourne movies. And, I don't know, is she known for much else around here? Maybe
Not in America, I don't think.
yeah, but she is on the phone with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend says that he picked up some money for some gangsters, and then she wasn't there for some reason that kept her back because there was something that was hanging her up. And because she wasn't there, and because he had so much money on his person, he decided to walk back to some place, and he got on a train. And when he got on the train, cops came on the train, and he got off the train, and the bag was left behind. And all he could see after that was a homeless dude looking at him on the train as the train goes off. So he knows who's got it. He just doesn't know where that guy is. Problem is he has to have this money by noon on this while they're having this phone call. He has to have the money by noon, or else this gangster's going to kill him. And she's 20 minutes away. And she's like, don't do anything until I get there. But he's thinking about knocking over this grocery store to get all this money back so that he can pay this gangster off. And she wants to get there before he does that. So she hangs up the phone, and it's like all of a sudden it's like this pulse pounding, you know, and she's running and she's going through all this stuff. And each time when she goes through this thing, the first time she just misses this one car that's about to come out and hit her. And every time she interacts with anybody on the street, the movie shows all these like photos of what happened to that person afterwards. It's
Oh,
a kind of
man.
an interesting little wrinkle that they throw in there. Like some of them, like, oh, they found love and they got married, or oh, this one got drug overdose, or this one, you know, there's so many different little like things that they add to that. Of course, on the first go around, she gets to the phone booth like just too late, and the guy goes in the grocery store and he starts to rob it, but he gets stopped, and then it ends up I think she dies. And then like each one of these things like has an interlude where she's in bed with Manny and they're talking their future out and everything, and it's like, and she's basically saying, I don't want to end it this way. And then it goes back to the beginning of the phone booth thing, and she's going to start doing different things now to try to get the money. And she has this I think in the first one she tries to go to her dad who runs a bank, and her dad's got his own thing going on where he's been sleeping with this woman, and she's about to tell him that she's pregnant. And Drew, there's like 4 different times Lola goes through this thing, and like there's times where the woman gets to say that she's pregnant to the guy. There's other times where she doesn't get to say.
Oh, wow.
And it changes things ever so slightly enough. It's this movie's great because it's not, of all the Groundhog Day sort of like I guess knockoffs, if you want to call it that. This one doesn't focus on like millions of turns. This one's got 4 different times that she does this, and each one has its own little variations to it as she tries to stop her boyfriend from robbing the store. And it's a fun, fast paced movie. I love it a lot. I want to own this one. I don't know if there's a Blu-ray of it out there, but this is a really good movie, and I could see us big recommending this one someday.
I watched this with Josh 1999, I guess, as soon as it came out on home video. Didn't see it in the theaters and loved it, and I have not ever seen it again. So you have just spurred me to goose that movie up toward the top of my list, because I remember loving it, but I don't remember anything about it, and you made it sound good.
Yeah. I mean, it's so quick and like it's so amusing throughout. It doesn't waste any of its time in this thing. And so and Franca Potenta is I wish I'd seen more of her over the years. I can only think of that Born Identity, and maybe some other movie I'm not thinking of right now.
Well, she's in the second. Well, she's in Supremacy for like the first 15 minutes, and then she dies.
Right.
But there is another movie I've seen her in. I just don't remember what it was, but she's great.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. So let's go on to our big recommend, which is The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
You had not seen this before, right?
I had not. I have actually seen the Denzel John Travolta one twice, but I have never seen this before Sunday, and I can't wait to talk about it. You go.
Yeah. This one is very, very simple. Basically, Robert Shaw has a gang of people that he has that's going to hijack a train, and what he wants is $1 million, or else he starts killing everybody on the one car that he separated from the train. And they all go by colors. If you're a Reservoir Dogs fan, I am almost certain Quentin Tarantino lifted this color scheme
Has to have
from this movie. But Robert Shaw plays blue, and Martin Balsam plays green. Hector Elizondo plays gray. And for you Home Improvement fans,
yes,
Earl Hindman plays brown. He's the half-face neighbor in Home Improvement. That's going to hit like probably 0.5% of our audience. But it was so interesting to see that this guy had other things he did than be the half-faced neighbor in Home Improvement. But he leads this gang into this train, and they've got everything. He's got all the details. Martin Balsam plays a guy who used to run trains, so he knows all about how to drive them and everything. He knows all the different, he knows all the protocols and all that. He got fired because they thought he was smuggling drugs or whatever, which is a really funny scene in there where Shaw asks him, like, why'd they fire you? And he's like, well, they said I was smuggling drugs. And it's like, they never had any proof I did it or anything. Was like, did you do it? No, I'd never do anything like that. And here he is sitting there robbing a train or hijacking a train so that he can get money. Meanwhile, Walter Matthau plays the cop who is the transit cop, the head of the transit cops. And he's going to have a basic day, it looks like. He is just going to be showing this contingent of Japanese guys like who run a subway in Tokyo. He's going to show them all around the New York subway map. And and that's all he's doing. He's sitting there talking through the whole thing. He doesn't think that they understand a word he's saying. Of course, there's the big surprise at the end that they have been understanding everything he's been saying, even all the racist stuff he's been saying throughout the whole thing. But he's showing them through all of this, and meanwhile, the people who are actually in charge of all the different where the trains are and telling the conductors what they need to do and all that stuff, that big control board, they've heard, they see this one train that's doing some weird shit. It stopped, and then certain parts of the cars have come off and it's going backwards and all sorts of stuff, and they send one of their dudes down there, or it's one of the guys like basically sends himself down there. And this is what I want to get to in the heart of this movie. Everybody in this movie is such a fucking frazzled New Yorker. I love it so much.
I have a note about this guy, the guy who volunteers himself to go down there and check it out, and how he literally barks at everyone he passes. He's got some kind of sharp word for it. It's freaking hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and then you have another guy who's like, who first gets the call from Shaw, and like and Shaw's like, he wants money and everything. He's like, yeah, bullshit, you want money, whatever, pal. He's just talking back to this dude like he doesn't even know how dangerous this guy is, because it's New York. Apparently, this is one of the funniest things in the movie, is when Shaw first pulls out his gun and says, this is a hijacking. They all laugh at him at first.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we live in fucking 1970s New York. Do you think this is going to scare us? But I just love how everybody's just so gruff and so just miserable, and everybody just talks back to each other. There's no like friendliness whatsoever. Like it's kind of friendly in a way because it's familiar, because everybody probably interacts with each other this way all the time. But Mathau ends up being on the radio with Shaw, and he's like, and he's just like kind of bored with this, almost like, all right, pal, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna you think you're gonna get this money out of the subway? What the fuck do you think you're doing? It's and Shaw's very confident. He's like, I am gonna be taking this money out. You can't stop me from doing it. But they have a limited amount of time. They have an hour, in fact, to somehow go to a bank, get $1 million in this like really complicated manner, and take it to the train. It's almost like in Speed, where Dennis Hopper is like making things super impossible, and Keanu Reeves is like, well, if we give him the money, he wins. If we don't give him the money, he wins, because he gets to kill a lot of people. And that's it's almost feels like that in a way. But yeah, so he gets an hour to do it. That's another thing I love too, is like, it's like Walter Matthau keeps on trying to bargain with this guy, saying like, you got to give us more than an hour. He's like, your rules were very complicated. You don't have to give us, you're going to give us an extra 15 minutes. And Shaw is like, he ends up telling Balsam, he's like, why don't you just give him the 15 minutes? And Balsam's asking him, and he goes, if you tell them 2 hours, it's going to take them 2 hours. If you tell them 1 hour, it's going to take them an hour. It's like, this is the time that I've given them, and they're going to have to abide by that. And eventually it gets to this point where, Matthau does successfully bargain some minutes on all of this, but it's just a very exciting, tense movie throughout. I don't think I've seen a bad guy like Shaw very much over the years, who's just very cool. He's a man of his word, and he doesn't like burst out into anger or anything like that. He's just very, very cool about, I'm going to get this money, and it's not going to be a big deal. And I'm going to get away with it. And if I don't get away with it, I don't want to do this other, he said something like, I can't remember what other job he was saying he was going to do if he didn't do this or whatever, but he doesn't want to live a normal life anymore. And it's pretty apparent that it's this or bust. So yeah, I have seen this 2 or 3 times now in my life. What did you think of this movie, Jeremy?
I loved it. I loved it. This is the not fucking around movie. Like the 70s. One of the things I love about 70s movies is they don't fuck around. Like you said, this is a very straightforward movie. The opening has very little dialogue for the first 10 minutes or so. Just really good score, and it's telling you what what world you're in by showing you. Um and it's not a super long movie. Like the Travolta Denzel one has a wildly different ending that is
Yeah.
way overly complicated. They also write this whole storyline in for Denzel, who's playing the Mathau character, that he's being investigated for some kind of slush fund or something.
Yeah.
Um, and that's not needed. Mathau just he's perfectly frustrated and frazzled. We don't need like a boss over his shoulder going, "You're still under investigation." It's just
Yeah.
unnecessary. Modern movies do that kind of thing all the time.
Yeah.
Even the end of the Travolta Denzel one, Travolta's playing the main bad guy,
Mhm.
Blue, and instead of touching the track himself to end his own life, like he's trying to get away with the money on a bridge at the end of that movie.
Mhm.
Whereas this movie, I actually okay, so that guy dies, and they start to. I'm spoiling the movie for everybody who hasn't seen it. Mathau and his buddy decide to go investigate these 9 guys that used to work for the railroad that may have been involved in the heist. And I literally am thinking to myself, you're going to end this movie this way after that climax? But then when they get to dude's apartment and he keeps like hiding the money and thinking he's going to be discovered, and it's clear that he's being overly defensive, but they don't have anything. And then Mathers closes the door, and the guy sneezes, and he says "Gesundheit," and then he opens the door with what has to be one of the best facial expressions in all of film history, with this look that just says, "You're fucked, buddy. You
It's
screwed
so
yourself. It's
priceless.
over." And the movie ends right there.
Yeah.
And I cackled. I was laughing for minutes. Um, I love what you're talking about how everybody's angry and frazzled, and I wrote
Mhm.
everybody has character here, like the Grand Tower supervisor who ends up eventually dying, yelling at everybody as he goes through the subway. He's just an
Yeah.
asshole. You got the mayor mad about missing the newlywed game.
Yeah.
Later on, there's a section where he goes, "Shit, piss, fuck," and it cuts to another scene. I just love how everybody is angry, and they get even angrier as it goes along. Like this, there's this dude that works for Mathau that does not care about these 18 lives at all. He is vehemently apathetic about that in favor of
Mhm.
getting his trains running again. And it's really over the top, but it does lead to a fun confrontation at the very end. But that anger becomes palpable, and it's almost contrasted with the scenes on the train where, like you were saying, the head bad guy is completely calm, and it's kind of quiet until, 1 or 2 moments of violence break out. But the
Mhm.
contrast there is interesting. The bad guys are calm and the good guys are all frazzled. I guess that's probably how it is when you spend time
Well, and
doing
you
all that
you
planning.
can you can tell how cool Shaw is right off the bat because he's waiting for the train at the very beginning where the front car is going to be. And this black guy comes by and starts waiting for the train, and Shaw starts staring at him, and the black guy turns to him and he says, "Hey, dude, what? You never seen a sunset before?" And I just died laughing on that one. And Shaw, I think in most movies you're going to see that. Oh, he's serious. He's so dead serious, and he doesn't like that. He doesn't like that someone joked at him. But he even cracks a smile
Does.
when that guy says that. Um, there's an unbelievable amount of humor in this movie considering what kind of like grungy place we're in at the time. I hear that it could have been even more grungy. They wanted to have the subway cars have trademark graffiti on it basically because back in this day all the subway cars had graffiti all over the place, and
Right.
apparently apparently the New York transit system said, "Here, have some clean ones. We don't want everybody thinking there's graffiti on everything," which is weird because as soon as you walk onto a subway in 1974, it's what you're going to see.
Yep.
But there's I also love the fact that there's people that just pop up in this that you're like, what? Like Jerry Stiller is in this, and if you're used to his Seinfeld character,
Yeah.
it's like weird to see him play like a straight up role like this.
Yeah.
Then you have James Broderick, who's Matthew Broderick's dad, is the conductor who leads all the other passengers off through the
Okay.
tunnel. And then you have Tony Roberts, who was a mainstay in all the 70s movies, especially like Woody Allen films. But Tony Roberts almost steals this movie when it's not Mathau on screen or Shaw, and it's him. He definitely steals the non main parts, because he's the vice mayor, but he seems to be the only guy who has it together in this whole thing. There's a point where he's sitting there he's like just begging the mayor to come up with a decision about this money already. Like, go ahead and give these guys their money. Who cares? And the mayor's like, I think we should give them the money. And he's like, oh, thank Christ. And he starts sending everybody off to do their thing. And it's like the guy who seems like he should really be in charge isn't. A lot of people also think that the mayor is playing Ed Koch in this, but Ed Koch did not get elected until like 1978 or something. But apparently the dude looks enough like Ed Koch that after the fact, people think that that's who he's playing throughout this whole thing. But Doris Roberts plays his wife.
Oh, wow.
In this. So this is like another one where it's like, wow, there's a lot of people in this that are just kind of in, very minor roles, but I really enjoyed that playing Spot the semi-famous person or famous person in this movie.
I for a brief moment I flashed into nitpicking mode when the police car is racing with the money to get there in time, and I'm like, they do say the line, go to this bank, we've worked with them a bunch, which suggests that bank would be more willing to donate $1 million. But that is the furthest away bank in all of New York City that they have to drive for that long with escorts. And then it leads to what I think is a sweet bit of continuity, because that car flips and wrecks, and they give the money to the motorcycle cops and say, take it on. And then at the very end of the movie, Mathau and his buddy go out to investigate the 9 guys, and they drive by that scene, and the car is being flipped back over by a big machine that didn't have to do that. There's no reason for that, but I appreciated the callback to yes, what you do in New York does have an impact, and it takes hours to repair and fix and get the traffic going again. But I did think they probably could have found a bank closer to the scene.
There's no doubt. Yeah.
They also do this thing with the money where they show it being counted by a couple different machines. And then after that, they count it all by hand.
Yeah.
Like, you count, if you're going to count by hand at all, you count by hand first, and then you verify with the machine. You don't do it in reverse. Anyway, I loved the movie. I thought it was perfectly sparse in what it was showing me and giving me. There's not a lot of flash. Again, if they made this movie today, which they did with Denzel and John Travolta, they'd blow everything out of proportion and have this big, showy, dialogue-driven standoff on a bridge, whereas this one just gives that look. God, now Denzel could have done a cool look if he'd been given that scene in that movie, but he's not. But that was one of the best looks I've seen in any movie, anytime. That was my biggest takeaway. I could not stop laughing about all that he conveyed.
I think Robert Shaw's death in this is one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They talk about the third rail quite a bit in this. I'm actually surprised more people don't die in the third rail, considering how many people are walking through the tunnels in that one scene, and how much stuff's going on all through the tunnels. But Shaw, like, he definitely he doesn't care. He doesn't care about death. It's quite clear in this.
Yep.
It's either I'm going to have 250 grand to spend for the rest of my life, or I'm just going to die because I'm not going to do this other bullshit that I was thinking about doing. And he just steps on the rail, and then you see Mathau's look like, oh, and then Shaw's just kind of got this, just like determined, like, all right, well, this hurts, this sucks, but it'll be over soon. So it's one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in my life. But anyway, yeah, not much to delve into with this movie other than the fact that it's great. It's very quick. It's very, it's just solid all the way around. The characters, as you mentioned, everybody's got character. Everybody's a fucking just annoyed New Yorker, and it's great. It's liberating to watch it. The heist is very simple, and everything is easy to follow. And I love this movie a lot. The remake is fine. The remake is totally fine. I didn't have a problem with it. It's just, it's not this.
Right.
So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Now it's time for the double feature.
Be very, very quiet. Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
All right, so there's so much radio back and forth conversation in this movie, right? Even when they decide to pay the money, they have to relay that through like 5 different radios. Like they call the cop calls the other cop, that cop calls Mathau, Mathau calls, and for that reason and the train connection alone, I almost went with Unstoppable, which is another Denzel Tony Scott film that has a shit ton of radio conversations back and forth between Kevin Dunn in his conference room and Rosario Dawson in the headquarters, and then people on the trains, and then the guy in the red truck who's out racing the train, who's kind of a hillbilly. But there's no heist there. And I feel like a double feature of taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 needs to have some kind of heist.
Mm-hmm.
So I went with another Denzel film, The Inside Man.
Yes, I thought about this too.
Spike Lee, in my opinion, it's my favorite Spike Lee movie, and it's not a traditional Spike Lee movie. But there's a bunch of bank robbers who take some hostages, who have a plan more convoluted than the cops will be able to figure out in time. And there's a bit of a standoff. And I just think the mood and tone of these two movies is very similar and would be a nice complementary piece.
I agree.
If you have not seen The Inside Man, I highly recommend you check that out. It is fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. I was sitting there thinking the same thing through this. Inside Man would be an excellent double feature to this. I'm glad you brought this up because real good stuff. Talk about an envious afternoon of movies is watching Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 and Inside Man. That's amazing shit.
See some people asking why I didn't go with Money Train or Speed, and those are both great. I thought about both of those during watching this movie. I felt they were a little on the nose. I wanted to go my own. I wanted to go my own way.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I think in the trivia for this on the IMDb, it said that they were. I guess the New York City Transit was a little worried that people might get ideas watching this movie, and nothing ever happened. But when Money Train came out, someone did try to do the heist from Money Train. So that it was like, I guess their fears were founded, but not for the right movie. I don't know. It was that was a weird thing to come across.
I'm surprised that doesn't happen more often. People trying heists from movies like that opening heist in Usual Suspects where they robbed the money truck. I'm surprised that hasn't been mimicked. Not that I'm encouraging anyone to do crime. That would be terrible.
Yeah, and by the way, Jagged says, I think I would go with The French Connection. It has the second best car chase of all time after The Matrix Reloaded, of course, for those of you who remember our movie fights with Honest Trailers. That was a reference to that. So what's going to be next week's homework?
All right, next week we're going to watch a movie I have not seen in 20 years. It is an all-time classic, 1957's 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
This is Sidney Lumet's directorial debut. From what I'm told on the IMDb, it
That
is
sounds
a
about right.
100 on the Rotten Tomatoes. It is set in a jury room deliberating after a murder trial, and it's one of the best films of all time. I want to see it again.
Mhm.
I also get to show my brother's kids some movies whenever they come and stay, and this is, I think, a good one that might entertain and show that black and white movies from the 50s can kick ass and don't have to be old timey and lame.
Mhm.
You can watch this for free in a host of places, but you're probably going to have ads. You can watch it on Tubi, on Pluto, and on Amazon Prime Freevee. You can also rent it at any of your usual streaming rental places for $2 or $3.99. That is your homework for next week, and I think we have time for some questions.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
What, in your opinion, is the worst Best Picture winner, and what movie would you give the award to instead?
All right. So for me, I think the worst one, and this is going on like a fading memory here, but I remember going through watching a bunch of Best Pictures at one point, and I thought that Out of Africa was one of the worst Best Pictures I have ever seen. Now, I could probably go back and watch Out of Africa and think, "Oh, that's actually really good." I was in a bad mood that day when I watched it, but I it won over The Color Purple, and I think The Color Purple is a way better movie than Out of Africa is. I think if The Color Purple had come out, I mean, if these two movies had come out maybe 20 years later, Color Purple would have ended up winning it. But I wasn't a big Out of Africa fan at all. So that's the one I pick.
Very good. Very good choice. It's interesting that before the show, we were talking about broadcast news because it did not win Best Picture and it lost to The Last Emperor, which when I finally saw The Last Emperor a year and a half ago, it bored me to tears.
It's long and boring. Yes.
And it's, it's beautiful, but broadcast news, I think, stands the test of time, both in the way its human emotions play as well as what it has to say about news, because all of that biting commentary is still true today. And that should have won. And I'm seeing Crash, obviously, here in Crash over Brokeback.
That's not that. I think if the Academy had a redo, they would definitely do Brokeback over Crash. And Crash may not even get nominated, but I think a lot of people were pointing out when Crash got nominated, the way the Academy rules were, like there's so many people in Crash and so many people associated with the people who were in Crash that it was one of those things where like, oh, I know that movie, and they just they kind of gave it more
Seriously,
credit than
you
it
have
was.
people who are like, I like Sandra Bullock, and then you have people who are like, I love Ludacris, and they all voted for that movie.
Right. So yeah, by the way, The Last Emperor, that Academy Awards, that 1987 one, I guess was in 1988. That Oscar telecast was the first Oscar telecast that I ever watched.
Oh wow!
And it was for a 10-year-old, or a 10 or 11-year-old, it was weird because every category was The Last Emperor, Empire of the Sun, Last Emperor, Empire of the Sun. And I was like, I've heard the word empire or some form of it a million times by the end of this thing. But anyway, yeah, we'll go on to the next
one. Let's move on to another question. Does the runtime of the movie have an effect on your decision to watch it?
Nowadays, yes. Used to be no, it doesn't. But now I have to figure out where I'm going to fit this 3-hour movie or this 2-hour 40-minute movie or whatever. And if it gets past 2.5 hours, I'm usually pretty reticent to go to a movie theater and watch it. And then I'm also fairly reticent to watch it at home unless there's just nothing to do. And that's rare these days. It's so rare. I don't like, I was spoiled through 20 years of movie theater, watching movies on my own, not having to deal with customers or anything like that. Watching movies on Thursday nights with nobody around to do anything stupid. And now it seems like every theater I go to, every time I go to any auditorium, there's like people talking and stuff. And I can't even imagine that for 2.5 to 3 hours. Count me as one who may not be going to Avatar during this.
Well, it's 3 hours and 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
And Cameron is out here bragging in interviews about how he cussed out the Fox executive who asked him to make it shorter. He
Yeah.
said, "Get the fuck out of my office." And then he's also, I think, bragging about how the movie has to be the 4th or 5th highest grossing movie of all time just to break even.
Yeah.
And that means he's spending so much money, and he's kind of cocky about it, and it's not going to happen, but I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't do what he hopes
Well,
it does.
you know why you're kind of secretly hoping this is because Hollywood is going to take the wrong lesson from this movie succeeding.
Yeah.
Like Cameron is sitting there talking about like, oh, look at this new 3D technology and how I'm implementing it. And it's amazing. Hollywood isn't going to be sitting there going, well, everybody's going to be shooting a 3D movie like Cameron now. They're just going to say, let's put 3D on everything again, like they did when the last Avatar came out. And everything, there's going to be stuff that's retrofitted for 3D and all that. It's going to make a mess of movie watching again, where you have to like decide every time, do I want to watch the 3D version or do I want to watch the 2D vision? I know that Avatar Way of Water was really good. I'll watch Alice in Wonderland 2 with with 3D, so
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, okay, so I like the Batman, but even in my initial rave about that movie, I said this is clearly 25 minutes too long. And um it's not just Avatar. There's some other movie that's coming out soon that's 3 hours long, and I'm just like, I'm just over it. Like, again, in the 90s, if a movie was over 2 hours long, it seemed long. Like, at least when I was building movies in the mid to late 90s, everything was like hour and 45 minutes, hour and 50 minutes. That's a
Yeah.
movie. That's a movie. The 3 hours is a miniseries. God damn it! All right, good
yeah,
one.
yeah.
My answer to this question was that the length of the movie definitely affects when and where I watch it. I'm not going to see
Mhm.
Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which is also 2 hours and 40 some minutes long,
Yeah.
until it's on home video, even though I kind of want to see it. So yeah, I mean, and it is trending the wrong direction. It's trending longer and longer and longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this was this past year. I think it was this past year where it seemed like everything decided that we're going to be 2.5 hours or longer for some reason. And I don't understand the logic to it. Like there's some sort of new philosophy that longer is better for some reason. Longer. But like, there just seems to be, I don't know, it just seems to be like nobody editing anything anymore. Just like, you wanted it to 2 hours and 45 minutes. Who gives a shit? We're not, that it's almost like because there's not enough competition in theaters that studios are like, okay, you can have your 2.5 hours. Who cares? Like
Yeah.
that's basically what it comes down to.
Yep.
And we're going to probably see a correction of that if we get more and more coming out.
I'll be so happy. I'll be
Yes.
so happy. All right. Moving on. I am watching Paddington 2. What is a modern adaptation of a book movie show from your childhood that completely lived up to the warm, fuzzy memories you had?
I don't know if anything has ever really lived up to the feeling of whatever TV show that I watched back in the day, but I do remember quite enjoying the Brady Bunch movie. I think it was one of the first of its kind that took a property and said, we're going to take this property, we're going to call it that, but we're also going to make fun of what was going on in that show. And it's going to be, everything's going to be like, we're going to have, Greg and Marcia have feelings for each other. And we're going to have like, we're going to put some edge into this thing. And I remember like, man, I watched all the Brady Bunches back in the day. and I don't remember like the whole series or anything, but I remember that used to be a thing. Go home about 3 or 4 o'clock on TBS. Brady Bunch, like 2 or 3 would run right in a row, and
Yep.
I watched all of them. And so when the Brady Bunch movie came out, I think I had sort of grown up to it. I was like 18 when the Brady Bunch movie came out, so I was ready for a movie that made fun of the Brady Bunch, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know how well that movie particularly holds up these days, because it's going to
Pretty
seem
good.
kind of quaint. But
Uh,
I kind of maybe want to revisit this someday.
I saw it a couple years ago, and I think it holds up. The second one, which I also saw a couple years ago, is not anywhere near as good. But the whole Greg and Marcia are hot for each other, but
Hmm.
can't admit it, which
Yeah,
is not a joke about the show as much as it's a reference to rumors about behind the scenes of making the show, but it
yeah.
makes the movie funnier. Yeah, I really like the Brady Bunch movie.
That scene in Brady Bunch movie, I do still remember this one because it's the scene where they're up in the same room, they're sharing the same room and everything, and Marcia has this voice all the way through, sure Jan, blah 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 blah, and then there's a point where Greg, like he talks to her through the sheet, and there's some like undressing going on or whatever, and he's like Marcia, and she's like, yes, Greg. Like this real throaty like thing. And it's like I'm like, I can't believe we're going there, but we are. It's pretty amazing.
I grew up watching Charlie Brown and Snoopy and the Peanuts Gang. My brother was
Ah,
in the
yes.
You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown show, and so that music was always playing in our house that year. And the specials that they have for each holiday were always big annual watches. And a
Oh
few
yeah.
years back, they came out with what looks like a digitally animated Peanuts movie
Hmm.
that I didn't think got much fanfare or ado. And when I finally saw it, I thought it was really, really cute.
It
And
did okay.
it kind of gave me that same kind of vibe. Now, again, it's not making fun like the Brady Bunch
Right.
movie was.
Hmm.
And I see people mentioning the Muppets, the one with Jason Segel, and I think the Peanuts movie does what the Muppets movie does, in that it sort of recaptures some of that original magic,
Yeah.
which gives you those feely feels, feely
Hmm.
bedeelies.
I don't think I ever saw the Peanuts movie. I watched those specials growing up, all the Christmas, Halloween, all those. I saw those, and I read the comic, but I don't think I ever saw the movie. So, may have to give
Yeah,
that a shot.
there's a great sequence with Snoopy delusionally in his head fighting the Red Baron in a dogfight. It's really fun, man. It's really cute. I think that's probably going to do it for today on
Yep, that
time.
will do it. And man, the chat is talking about all the words they can get away with saying. Oh
Yes,
my, oh
naughty
my.
chat.
So many things that I don't know. There's so many things I don't know about this chat, by the way. Like I see occasionally a bot come on saying somebody
Yes,
sworn a bunch of times, and I'm like, is that a thing? I didn't know that was a thing.
yeah.
Anyway, thanks, chat, for coming out
Thanks, man.
and making it lively once again. Appreciate you guys coming to watch us every Tuesday, and it seemed like there were a lot of you today. So,
Yep.
very very happy with that. Next week's homework is
12 Angry Men,
12
1957.
Angry Men. 1957. There are many different versions of. Apparently, the one they came out with, like most recently, was pretty good too. Like
Great.
really good as
The one
well.
with Jack
But
Lemmon
yeah,
and Ving Rhames.
Jack Lemmon.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait, Ving Rhames was nominated in the same category, but wasn't in that movie, I don't think.
yeah. But
Jack Lemmon was.
it was apparently really good. Anyway, it's the 1957 version. Sidney Lumet. That's next week's homework. Anyway,
Yep. Thanks, guys.
appreciate you guys coming out. We'll
See
see
ya.
you next time. See ya. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the Cinemasins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or Cinemasins Twitter at cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to Recotopia at cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com.
Record. I said record. It's already recorded. La 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 la. Wait, what? What is it? What's the line Albert Brooks says in broadcast news when he does the Arnold impression on the phone? Okay, see you in the lobbies.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
That's early in the movie, and he and Holly Hunter are in different hotel rooms. And she says, he's doing an Arnold impression, but she doesn't care. And she says, okay, I'll see you in the lobby. And he goes, okay, see you in the lobbies.
That's the part of the movie that I don't think I'm as familiar with as like the rest of it. Like that movie starts for me at the conference where they're talking about how entertainment is going to be the main thing. And Holly Hunter is trying to argue against this. This is back in 1987. You think about that. I mean, even Network in 1975 is talking about this entertainment being news thing being a problem.
Yep.
And but in 1987 she's talking about like this news and you know
it's
the
like
one
dominoes falling over or something, right?
Dominoes thing and is this what we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives or whatever? And that one woman in the crowd's like, hopefully, something like that.
I've got family coming in for the holidays. There'll be 9 of us here total instead of the typical 2. So I've been at the grocery store each of the last 4 days stocking up on some manner of something. And today was alcohol.
Yeah.
And I like to buy those kind of like small Coke bottle sized black box wines. It's like a third of a bottle maybe. And they have a couple of really good wines, but they're cheap. This is not the first time I bought more than one of these at Kroger in the U-Scan. But as soon as you scan any alcohol at Kroger in the U-Scan, it pauses and says, attendant is on the way because we have to make sure you're of age. At Publix, they'll let you scan everything and then just check your ID before you pay. But at Kroger, you just have to stop everything. And there's this thing they do. There's 4 or 5 different attendants that have done this, and it drives me batty. Let's say I have 8 of those wines in my cart, which I did today. They'll come over and check my ID for the one I've already scanned. Then they'll look in my cart and go, how many of those you got? 7? And then they'll boop, 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 log into the machine, beep, boop, boop, scan 1, times 7, deep, dop, doop, and then they one at a time put them, and it takes 10 times longer than if you just put my ID in and let me scan those fucking things and go home.
Yep.
You're defeating the purpose of the U-Scan. I know you're trying to be helpful. I get it. Like somebody has taught them to do this, probably because of old ladies who go through the U-Scan and don't understand it.
Probably.
But I am not that. You take one look at me and you know I know how to use U-Scan. This has happened enough times. I finally had to get it off my chest because it's such a weird, specific gripe. But it does drive me crazy.
You are bringing up a thing that I like to talk a bitch about more than about the same as driving. I hate fucking grocery stores. And I hate how they're laid out. I hate everything about them. Like I hate how everything is sort of created to cause log jams in places where there shouldn't be log jams if it wasn't for the fact that you want to display some bullshit that nobody wants to buy in the middle of this one thing. But the thing that happened to me on Sunday, and I knew better than to go to the grocery store on Sunday, but I had to.
I was there too.
It was like 3 or something, and it was a packed house. Obviously everybody's got carts. There's 1 million people, everybody's got carts. So, and the lines are long on each register and all that. That's something I can handle. The one thing that I can't handle are people who don't think that there are other people in the store. So they whip their carts around corners like there's nobody there. Like I always approach the end of an aisle with like this, I'm going to die kind of thing.
Exactly.
Because I don't want somebody to run over me. I don't want to hit a kid. I don't want to do any of these type of things. But this guy comes whipping around his cart through where the eggs and everything is, where everybody fucking is. And I'm like sitting there just going, dude, I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking? What the fuck are you thinking? And it was another one. I run into this often and ran into it the same day. I was in the aisle for, I think it was like pet food aisle or whatever, where hardly anybody is at the Publix that I'm at. And I was sitting there like, okay, I got my stuff, and now I'm coming out. I'm obviously coming out of the aisle, obviously doing that thing. I'm not stopping or anything. I am pushing my cart towards the edge of the aisle. This guy starts fucking coming through the aisle with his basket, and he's like, "Excuse me," and I was like, under my breath, I was like, "Fuck face," you know. I was like, and I was hoping he heard me, because it's just, you should understand that I'm coming out and you need to wait, and then you come through the aisle after that. Like, none of this, oh, I was just coming through and you need to get out of my way bullshit. No, I was getting out of the fucking aisle, dude.
The worst is that now, since the pandemic started, there's been an explosion in these like ghost shoppers, like Instacart, and like these basically Uber for shopping for your groceries. And these people,
Yeah.
I can spot them every single time. And it's both this, it's the main reason is there's this complete detachment from emotion.
Yeah.
As they move through the grocery store for probably the 10th time today. But they're also buried in their phone looking at the goddamn list, and they run into me, they run into stand-up things in the aisle, and they're a scourge. Is that a word?
Yeah.
I think that's a word.
Or scourge. I don't know if it's scourge or scourge, but it's one of those.
Fuck.
It's
one of those.
SCOURGE. That's what that is.
Scourge. Let's call it scourge.
Well, yeah, I ran into that as well. As soon as I walked into the store, I don't think it was an Instacart thing, but there was a couple. So like I walk in, and you know my first trip usually is through the drinks, the soda stuff. So I go and get all my various drinks at the very beginning, because those are the most cumbersome things to be putting in your cart. And so I come in and I see this one couple coming along the edge of the aisles, and I have to go across these middle displays, but I see them and I'm like, okay, they're on the other side of those middle displays that I hate. But they're on the other side of that, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait for them to go past so that I can go through the middle thing and go into the sodas or whatever. And so I go to that point, and then this couple comes up, and there's a woman trailing behind, and she stops right where I'm about to turn and just looks at her phone and sits there and I'm like, just pick an aisle. Pick a fucking aisle and go down it.
Yeah.
Who cares if you got the wrong one?
It's not surprising this is also up there with driving, because this is very much like driving. You see the same kind of people in cars, people buried in their phones, people who stop suddenly for no reason. And we saw a guy yesterday who was not in the yellow middle turn lane, but all the way over in the other way's traffic lane trying to turn left.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I was like, how do you even process what you
I've seen
I
some
don't get it.
absolutely outrageous shit in traffic recently. Like I
Especially because you drive in town so much more.
I kind of ranted on the BTS about this, but I was going down Charlotte, and there's the turn off for the interstate on 14th, close to downtown. That's where I'm going. I'm in the right lane, and there's a car I noticed in my rearview mirror that's definitely one of those I've got to be ahead of everybody cars, weaving in and out of traffic, basically. And he finally gets up to my bumper, and he has no place to go. And he, you know, it's one of those where they'll test lanes, just they'll get over in the left lane for no reason, expecting it to be faster or something like that, and it isn't. Well, that's what this guy did. He gets over in the left lane, and it's not going faster. So what does he do? He gets in the middle turning lane on the other side, on the left side, the middle turning lane between where the traffic's going back and forth. He passes people on that lane, and then comes back over into the left lane, and then he finally gets back over. But guess what? He just got over one car to do that, because he's just he's directly in front of me. He's directly in front of me. I'm like, what, you went through all of that trouble and possibly could have gotten in a wreck just to get one car ahead? You fucking guys think just for one fucking second? Just one fucking second.
Aaron, are you listening? Do you want to build a snowman? I told you, I showed you a picture. Yesterday we saw a car on the road, a 67 Lincoln Continental, that had a 1983 Tennessee license plate and tag.
Mm-hmm.
And I was mind blown for hours. Like, I half expected to see him get pulled up. We were right beside each other for about 2 miles. I expected him to get pulled over any moment. Like, I got pulled over for expired tags, but mine were 2001 tags.
Yeah.
These are 1983 tags.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife and I were having fun making up stories about how this has occurred. And the most logical one was my choice, which is not fun, which is that this is probably a keepsake car, and his day-to-day car has gone kaput on him this morning, and he has to get to work or wherever he's going. So he has to drive this old car and simply doesn't have updated tags. My wife thinks he's been in a coma for 40 years, and that's a much more enjoyable story to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm regretting not like flagging him down and yelling, "What's up with your license plate?"
That's a Seinfeld episode waiting to happen. That's one of those. They already did the way too long drive to prove a point episode, and the way too long drive to chase after somebody they thought they had flipped them the finger. They've done those. They did 2 of those, but there would be another one just to, because it's such a Seinfeld thing. I was talking about that episode the other day, the one about the woman who wears the same dress, like,
Yes.
and like. It gets to the point in all these Seinfeld episodes where he eventually breaks up with them or she breaks up with him because he's such an asshole or whatever, or there's some misunderstanding, and he doesn't even care about the breakup. He's just like, do one more thing before you go. Why you wear the same dress all the time? Oh, and he never gets the
You can't break up with me over the phone. Why do you wear the same dress all the time? It's so funny. Oh man. I love the conversation he and George have too, where George is like, "Well, maybe you caught her on the end of a laundry cycle, and she's washed it." And he's like, "Well, then wouldn't it show up at the end of the cycle?"
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe she bumped it up in the rotation.
Maybe she bumped it up in the rotation.
I love that it never answers it.
Yeah.
If they did an episode about this license plate, they would probably never answer.
Yeah.